It is my absolute pleasure to be chatting today with Dr. Peter McCullough. Dr. McCullough is a board-certified specialist in internal medicine and cardiovascular diseases, focusing on the interface of heart and kidney disease. He has an MD from the University of Texas and completed his internal medicine residency at the University of Washington. He also has a master's degree in public health from the University of Michigan and is a full professor of medicine at Texas A&M College of Medicine in Dallas. Dr. McCullough is one of the top 5 most published medical researchers with papers in more than 1,000 publications, including the New England Journal of Medicine, Journal of the American Medical Association, Lancet, and the British Medical Journal. He is also the editor-in-chief of Reviews in Cardiovascular Medicine and senior associate editor of the American Journal of Cardiology. Dr. McCullough has been an invited lecturer at the New York Academy of Sciences, the National Institutes of Health, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and the European Medicines Agency. On November 19, 2020, Dr. McCullough testified in the U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs concerning early ambulatory treatment of high-risk patients with COVID-19. Dr. McCullough is a COVID-19 survivor himself and welcomes post-COVID-19 patients into his practice. I am so deeply honored that you have come to chat with me today. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. McCullough.
Thank you. I have to give one correction to the bio sketch.
Yes,
and I'm always in fear and trepidation when I listen to someone read this because of the litigious nature of where we are right now. But I've been stripped of my professorship at Texas A&M after a decade of perfect performance without any due process, without any faculty senate, without any courtesy phone call. So I've been stripped of my professorship at Texas A&M, and then I've been followed with a legal threat letter against me if it's ever used or mentioned that I am a professor of medicine at Texas A&M. Just to let you know that the environment that we're navigating in, and I know you personally are very familiar with this. So
I am. Well, why don't we start there? I wasn't planning on it, but I didn't know that. I saw you had given a speech to is it the American Association, is it AAPS? I forget now. And you had said in that speech, and I'm not sure when it was, but that you were anticipating losing some of your credentials. And so that has in fact happened now. What does that make you think about? I mean, not just the culture of medicine, because you're a medical specialist, I'm not, but not just the culture of medicine, but about where our universities are at now that are supposed to be these arenas for free and open thought and debate and dialogue.
And also, the institutions that have processes and they have rules and they have charters. So, if one's a professor of medicine, it takes actually quite an effort to climb that ladder to become professor of medicine. And if one is ever to lose that status, there is a due process. There is a due process. One would let's say there was an act of moral turpitude, or there was a loss of a medical license, or something along these lines, some type of problem between a faculty and student harassment complaint or something like that. And someone, there would actually be faculty senate proceedings. There would be phone calls, there would be documents, charges, and then responses. There would be something. There wouldn't just be a letter, a one-sentence letter saying you're hereby stripped of your professorship at the university. But that's where we have arrived at right now. COVID-19 has been like a cloud. It's been a cloud that has settled down on our universities, and they're not actually processing things normally now. You can imagine that act of due process, all that sets the university up, which is a deep pocket, all it sets them up for is legal proceedings against them. So all they're doing is opening themselves up to liability. Normally, universities are very risk averse. Mm-hmm. Why would they do something? Why wouldn't they have a phone call regarding, some issue of a complaint? Why wouldn't they have a faculty senate hearing? Why wouldn't they go through due process? Why would they put themselves so to risk?
Yeah, why do you think that is? I mean, you're right. It would be fairly simple. I agree with you that, I mean, I've been involved with medical ethics for a while and the administrative side of academia on occasion. And if anything, that kind of due process is labored and tedious and exhausting and endless. And now, I think, as you point out, we're just seeing that dismissed entirely. Why do you think that is across the board, not just in medicine and government, in universities as well?
I think we'll only find out through discovery. So, in action against Texas A&M, for instance, one of the first things I'd be interested in is discovery. Show me all the emails where Dr. McCullough showed up in the emails. Mm-hmm. What precipitated this? What got into the minds of someone to actually do this? And I think discovery is going to tell a lot. Were there email connections from outside institutions, federal government, vaccine stakeholders, those working to suppress early treatment? Were there complaints from other faculty members? Where did all this come from? It's very mysterious. These almost kind of surgical strikes. So I've had that from Texas A&M. I've had the same from the University of North Texas, Texas Christian University. That's a medical school that barely got off the ground. They highly recruited me to be faculty. They wanted my name. At both institutions, by the way, I'm the most published person, the most notable person at those institutions. And I received a threat letter from American College of Physicians, of which I've been a member now for 40 years and a fellow, saying that while I had not violated their behavioral policy, they're watching that very closely. I subsequently just didn't renew with the American College of Physicians. I didn't pay their fees, and I asked them for a letter indicating that I'm no longer under their watch because I'm not a member of that organization. I received a notice from Karger Publications, a Swiss journal, that I was summarily dismissed as editor-in-chief of Cardiorenal Medicine. And that was after nearly a decade of perfect service. I had caused an elevation in the impact factor of the journal. It's a wildly popular journal now, very, very high quality, ran the editorial office like a top, every day made editorial decisions. Just a one sentence letter, you're hereby released of being the editor of Cardiorenal Medicine. Now, in that one, they found an excuse. They said, oh, we realize you're an editor of another journal, and we think that violates some part of your contract, so you're hereby dismissed. No courtesy phone call, nothing else. I got a surprise phone call from one of the associate editors who was shocked. So that event's happened. I've been stripped off a committee by the American College of Cardiology, just a writing group on a paper of which I wrote a substantial amount of. It's a collaborative paper. And the discussion is there is they said, well, we found a conflict of interest here, not disclosing what it is, and you're hereby dismissed from that committee. I was stripped by the National Institutes of Health off an oversight panel for the chronic renal insufficiency cohort study, the longest running cohort study in chronic kidney disease, of which I've actually been at times the chairman of that committee. I was stripped off that committee again with a comment about conflict of interest, and there was no new conflict of interest that I've had. So these have come in. I mean, multiple examples. They've come in. The only commonality to it is that there's no due process. There's no courtesy phone call. There seems to be shock among everyone else, and I think it's really worrisome.
You mentioned something earlier about, where we've gotten to. How do you think we've gotten to this place? We seem to be in a place where it's about division and ostracization and no due process, as you say, people being summarily dismissed, shut out. There seems to be a culture of silence everywhere. It's not just within medicine, right? It's everywhere. Our deputy prime minister, or premier in Ontario yesterday, who's also our minister of health, she basically scolded our College of Physicians and Surgeons for not keeping physicians who challenge the COVID narrative, for not keeping them in line and scolding them and making sure that they discipline them. I mean, this doesn't just come out of a vacuum, right? I mean, how did we get to this place? What do you think what's been going on over the last few years, over the last decade or two decades that have gotten us here?
Honestly, I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. Life was pretty good. I worked in a big medical group, academically oriented position, thriving practice, had an independently funded research group, funded PhDs and others, editor of 2 major journals. I was the inaugural editor of the textbook Cardiorenal Medicine, president of the Cardiorenal Society of America. As you pointed out, traveled the world. I was the endowed lecturer at Harvard 2 years ago. I didn't see this coming. But when COVID-19 hit, something fundamentally changed. There was a cloud of fear that settled down over these organizations. There appeared to be now new sets of powers that were installed. There was, in a sense, a narrative created. And when that narrative was created, there was no opportunity for discussion. We've never had an open forum to discuss COVID-19. In my field in cardiology, we have what's called Bethesda meetings. We get calls to Bethesda, Maryland, and we have FDA, NIH, industry, private doctors, and we have an agenda and we present what we think is a solution to an unmet need. We've never had this. We've never had any open discussion on how to tackle the pandemic. It's been a top-down approach. It's been a complete disaster. All the public health responses have basically, and basically by every metric, have backfired. And there seems to be a backlash against physicians at this point in time, other scientists.